like to invite everyone to go ahead and be seated. And before we start, if you have any cell phones, make sure to set those to vibrate or silent, whichever one you prefer, just in honor of everybody speaking here. I'd like to go ahead and welcome everyone to the first ever Esports Summit for 2015. This is really one of the first times that we've been able to have a panel here to get together to talk about both esports and traditional sports both at the same time. Now I'd like to also go ahead and start things off by inviting Mr. Byun-hun Jun, the president for IESF, here for the opening address. If you'd like to give him a round of applause.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am Byung-hun Jun, and as have been introduced, I am president of the
챔피언십 기간 중 세계 최초로 국제 스포츠 인사와 e스포츠 인사가 함께하는 e스포츠 서밋 2015를 개최하게 되어서 진심으로 기쁘게 생각합니다. IESF는 게임계와 스포츠계를 잇는 유일한 허브기관으로서 오래전부터 이러한 토론을 기획해 왔습니다. 이러한 의미 있는 자리에 참석을 해주신 우리 리타 스보우 OCA 상임위원님, 웨스트넬리 패트릭 넬리 대표님, 또 맨체스터 실버드 대학의 앤더 마이 교수님, 그리고 IESF 실비우 스트로이 부회장님, 그리고 한국의 자랑스러운 스트리트 파이터 종목의 세계 최고 선수인 이선우 선수께 깊은 감사를 드립니다. e스포츠의 정식 스포츠로서의 승인에 대한 가능성에 대해 많은 의견이 있었습니다. IESF가 스포츠 사회로 진입을 선포했을 때 많은 사람들은 게임이 어떻게 스포츠가 될 수 있느냐며 우려의 이야기도 많이 있었습니다. 하지만 지금 이 자리에는 그 누구보다 e스포츠가 정식 스포츠로 확신하는 그런 국제 스포츠 사회의 VIP들이 함께하고 계십니다. 또한 e스포츠의 정식 스포츠화를 위해 지속적으로 노력해온 e스포츠 주체들도 함께하고 있습니다. IESF가 걸어온 길은 틀리지 않았으며 앞으로도 우리 사회의 모든 그 주체들을 위해 함께 나아갈 그 준비가 되어 있습니다. 오늘 이 의미 있는 자리를 통해서 e스포츠가 국제 스포츠 사회에 얼마나 다가섰는지, 또 정식 스포츠로서의 위치가 우리에게 가져다 줄 수 있는 혜택과 비전은 무엇인지 직접 확인하는 자리가 되었으면 좋겠습니다. 아울러서 오늘 논의된 내용을 바탕으로 IESF는 모든 주체들이 함께 발전할 수 있는 e스포츠 아젠다 2020을 구축하도록 할 것입니다. e스포츠 아젠다 2020을 통해 e스포츠와 함께하고 있는 선수와 협회, 그리고 게임사들이 지금까지 경험하지 못했던 그런 정식 스포츠의 한 축으로서 한 단계씩 나아갈 수 있도록 더욱 노력해 나갈 것입니다. IESF는 앞으로도 국제 스포츠 사회에 게임 대회가 함께 고민하는 e스포츠 서밋을 지속적으로 개최할 것임을 밝혀둡니다. 여러분들의 지속적인 경청과 그리고 많은 토론을 기대합니다. 감사합니다.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And now let me go ahead and introduce to you the panel for today. We're going to start right in the middle. Madam Rita Subowo. She's a former member of the International Olympic Committee and currently the executive board member of the Olympic Council of Asia. Now moving on next to Mr. Patrick Nally. Mr. Nally is the founder of West Nally and the president of the International Federations of Poker, and is also acknowledged as the father of modern sports marketing. Now let me move on to Dr. Andy Mia. Dr. Mia is a professor from the University of Salford and the social media mentor of the International Olympic Committee. Now moving on to Mr. Silvius Stroe. He's currently the Vice President of the International Esports Federation and the President of the Professional Gamers League. Now lastly, Mr. Seonwoo Infiltration Lee. He's currently a top Street Fighter esports professional. Has competed at many international tournaments around the world, including the 6th Esports World Championship. Now let us begin with the Esports Summit 2015. This is going to be a great opportunity to discuss some of the main topics in esports today. So let's go ahead and start things by discussing the status of esports currently. This is going to be really important for determining where we are as esports. So I think the first real question to tackle here is that the discussion about can esports be recognized as sports and how we can achieve this, and really what are the benefits of having esports recognized as a traditional sport. So I guess my first question to all of you would be, what is the general perception of traditional sports bodies towards esports? And so to clarify that, how do traditional sports bodies view esports currently?
Well, I think there's a combination of things here. On the one hand, I think traditional sports are mindful of how the future may change. And so there's a sense in which esports represent the next century of sports traditions, which are presently being formed. So I think that many sports are looking at esports to try to figure out, well, what is our role here? Conceivably, 50 years from now, the number of sports that take place in the Olympic Games, half of them could be esports. And I think there's a sense of how the population of sport players, athletes, are turning their attention to new kinds of activities. And you see this happening over the years. So BMX, inline skating, mountain biking, you see the emergence of new kinds of sports. And I think esports represent certainly one new generation of sports. So there's a sense in which we have to kind of be aware of it. But there is, I still think, a kind of tradition around sports that is quite resistant to anything digital, especially where it involves athletes playing within digital environments. So one of the things that I'm very interested in is how we have the possibility of mixed reality sports, sports that are played within physical worlds with augmented reality content built into them. And that, for me, is a quite richer way of thinking about the future of esports.
Right. I know one of the main issues with the acceptance of esports into traditional sports is the idea that esports doesn't take the physical ability to to handle a ball, to run around a field. How do you feel like that difference? Do you feel like that is a significant difference? Or I guess opening this up to the rest of the panel, what do you think the acceptance of how closely do you think the acceptance of esports within traditional sports is tied to that difference between the two?
Yeah, this is the main question that we are getting from pretty much everybody in the sports world. What is the physical element into esports? And I can tell this is what I'm telling to all of them every single time. Right now we have also chess as an official sport, and we have a lot of mind games out there that are fully recognized. And even if esport doesn't involve a lot of movement, a lot of activity, a lot of physical activity, there are a lot of other, all the mental functions that every single player out there is using during training or competition are at a similar level with pretty much any other game out there.
All right, now, is it important for esports to be recognized as a traditional sport? And if so, what are some of the benefits that come from it being recognized as a traditional sport? Madam Spowo?
Thank you. I think now esport is very popular in terms of our young generations. You know, some of them didn't want to compete. They prefer to play games inside, and like my grandchildren, they all know about e-games. But of course, you need to be officially recognized, not only by your country, respected country, NOC, and National Olympic Committee of each country, as well as sport councils, and also, if necessary, you have the support from the government. This is very important. If you are recognized by your own respective sport institutions in the country, it's easier to go to regional, like for example, in our area, Southeast Asian Games, yes, through the Board of Executive Committee, and then start with the regional, or you can go direct. In Asia, for example, like in Korea, we can go through Olympic Council Asia, but through the National Olympic Committee. Because as you know, every Asian Games, like last year Asian Games, the formula is very, very clear. 28 sports of Olympics, plus 5 traditional regional sport, like for example, wushu, karate, petang, or kuras from, and then also 3 priority for the host organizers and OCS itself. So you can go through the regional or continent or direct from the host organizer. So that's the one that I know regarding the officially recognized. After the continental institution recognition, you can go to IOC. Start from the sport, before sport accord, what's the name now? And then you will ask and propose recognitions, not necessarily go direct to, because Olympic sport is very limited, but when you recognize by International Olympic Committee, that means you are inside the sport family. That's what I mean, yeah.
Thank you very much, Ms. Spowo. Now, another big factor for esports is it's what is drawing fans of traditional sports to esports. So let me open that up to Mr. Nally to maybe talk about what aspects of esports are drawing in fans of traditional sports.
I think we have to, first of all, understand that traditional sports are frightened of esports because traditional sports see the Olympic Games as obviously being the accolade to success, and they all fight viciously to stay on that Olympic calendar. But again, the Olympics is getting older. The Olympics has to embrace the younger generation, and because of technology and technology changes, esports has evolved with that technological change. And therefore now is the time for people to start realizing that with this technology change, sports need to change, and esports has a role because esports is attractive to young people, will continue to be attractive to young people, and people's views and attitudes to it will need to change because it should be embraced, where young people will embrace esports and young people will not necessarily embrace those old traditional sports. So they need to come together, they need to collaborate together, they need to have all stakeholders to work together, and in that way esports will find a very solid position within all sports.
Now maybe to Mr. Mia, to touch about that, what is, you work heavily with the social media, what is it that's drawing fans of traditional sports? I know social media is a big part of that. What is it specifically that's drawing them in to become interested in esports?
Well, you know, I think one big area that hasn't yet been exploited by traditional sports, but is becoming an increasingly large industry, is the mobile health market. So increasingly most of the people here in the audience and viewing will have some kind of health tracking application on their mobile phones, whether it's to do with running or playing football or whatever sport it might be. I think that accumulation of data and desire to kind of monitor how we're doing is one big way in which we see this interface between physical activity and digital connectivity. And that, for me, is a very powerful message to get behind. You know, when the Olympic Games was revived over 100 years ago, it got behind a narrative that was present in the world to internationalize social movements. Kubertan's vision worked, I think, because it had that at the core of it. The analogy to present day, I think, is around digital, that we have a kind of both an obligation but also a desire to expand digital experiences. And to do that on a global level with esports can bring about all kinds of social change. So if you imagine trying to allow esports to flourish in places that have limited digital infrastructure, if you get behind supporting athletes to have that technology, you can bring about all kinds of remarkable social change. So it seems to me that one of the key things that esports needs to figure out is that mission. Not just the mission to grow the sport as a discipline, as a practice, but as a social movement.
All right, and maybe a question to Mr. Nally and Madam Subowo. What is it that esports may need to change to become a part of other international committees? Specifically, we talked about it being a part of the Asian Indoor and Martial Arts Festival. So what is it that esports may need to adjust to become part of these larger organizations?
I think now is a very good achievement that you are already on an Asian Games Indoor and Martial Art. It's a big step, you know, to go. But the important thing is how, like Dr. Ain said, that combinations between traditional sport and e-sport itself. Because you have to combine regarding the excellence, friendship, and also respect. In terms of not only the famous, you are famous now. I think in terms of marketing and broadcast, you don't have a problem. But how to develop to be in a next level, and now you have to involve the athletes, because not the games, but the athletes. How to develop also that the athletes, they can become the example for a good athletes in the communities, you know. So because sometimes time limits for these games, regulations, and sometimes if they are under pressure, so they will say something that this need to educate the athlete itself. And I think it's not a big problem. You can go to a next level, not only at Asian and indoor games. But the only problems is that how about the physical activities on the e-games? So this afternoon when during the lunch, I said that how that we can combine maybe before the real competitions, you know, all the athletes should do something, physical activities in front of the audience, or maybe it will at some point for the, you know, the winner, I don't know, but at least need something in these physical activities. Thank you.
I think what I would like to say is that esports is far too fragmented. You know, there are a lot of countries here that are not here, where there should be countries here. If there's China and Russia, isn't it disappointing that the United States is not here playing? The fact that esports is new and is reliant on commercial operators that own games, the fact that you have a lot of promoters doing their own thing and doing their own promotion, I think what we have to do is to galvanize the sporting community around esports, understand the importance and the power that esports has to the community and to the world, and get all stakeholders to embrace what it is that you're doing. I have similar problems in promoting poker because poker sees this as a gaming and gambling, which it's not, because we are promoting a game of skill and a participation of skill. And it's this communication that esport also needs to understand, that you are engaging society in a very positive and meaningful way, and that games owners, promoters, all stakeholders, governments, sports ministers should galvanize together, support the International Federation, and then the International Federation will have an enormous success.
Absolutely. So to just recap on what Ms. Boas said, really establishing an example from popular esports icons so that they can be example to other esports athletes as ways to act and present esports to the world around them. And then I guess to tie into what you said, the big issue associated with esports is how to become a part of other international competitions, and I think specifically the IOC is a big organization that esports would love to become more closely attached to. So to achieve recognition from the IOC, like what should all the parties do, whether it's IOC or esports? How should they cooperate to become a part of the IOC?
I think I get involved in International Federation as Executive Vice President of Volleyball since maybe more than 15 years. Before, nobody knows regarding beach volley in Asia. We are 35 years behind. So we have to work hard to be able to promote our beach volleyball. And now you see, last Olympic Games in London, they reached maybe the third, or I don't know. The contribution is very large to IOC. But we have to work hard. I have to go to every island in Oceania and in Asia, to promote these games. And to go, because nobody wants to broadcast it because of too quick, and the ball is already, But now, after 1.5 years, went to the lab in Tokyo, and then we found out that the ball should be, lighter than before, something like this. So the combination between technical in e-games and political, political is very important for official recognitions, but technical also very important to be able to be accepted as one of sport in any category. So you can very easy to go for any multi-event in the world.
Very important to recognize both the technical and political aspects of esports as it looks to be accepted by international organizations like the IOC. And that has to do a lot with the status of esports right now, but I'd like to actually move on and talk a little bit about a lot of the moving forces within esports, a lot of the transitions, a lot of the changes that's going on there. Now, what do you think is the real cause behind the explosive growth of esports, just growing rapidly over the last few years? What forces are behind that explosive growth? And I guess we can start once again over here with Mr. Mia.
Well, I think if you look at the gaming industry generally, it's still so early, but in fact there have been such great leaps in terms of the narrative and design of games, the playability of them. The kinds of people that get involved with gaming today is so different from 20, 30 years ago that I just think they've become the art form of the 21st century. Game titles are outstripping the economic value of the film industry. So there's a sense in which anyone who's working around creative media is working around games. And that, I think, is a huge ecosystem that surrounds the games that we play, because it's just so much investment there. So if you look at games being developed for virtual reality experiences, this is where I think people find a lot of excitement. There's a possibility of experiencing something new, playing something different, and really it being a very immersive experience, not just for the players, but also for the spectators. And that, I think, is a very powerful situation to be in. And it's partly what explains why there's such an interest around it. The fact that we sit here and watch games being played, it's remarkable, really. And I think it has to do with what's in the game in terms of innovation.
So then, how do you really see like such a record of esports if you compare it to traditional sports and growth of things like beach volleyball, like Ms. Sabo mentioned, the growth of traditional sports for some of the newer sports has been very rapid as well. So how would you compare the growth of esports to the growth of traditional sports? Do you see it developing as quickly as they did in their inception, or maybe even quicker?
No, actually, the development of esports is much faster than any other sport in history. I mean, if you're looking a couple of years ago, we had esport events with like a couple of thousand viewers, and now we are having almost weekly events that are gathering tens of millions of viewers online. And going forward, I think by far, esport is going to be the biggest sport in the world out there. I mean, it's not, of course, I'm heavily involved in esports, but when you see an event that is taking place for 3 days and you have 20, 25 million unique people watching your event, you realize this is something really big. I mean, there are very, very few sport events out there that can reach this amount of viewers.
Right, and the viewership numbers are really a great indication of how much interest there is in esports. I mean, it could be anything besides esports. It could be, competitive, I don't know, cartwheeling, whatever. And if it goes through that many viewers, there's a lot of force behind that, and it's been incredible to watch the growth of esports there in that regard. Now, some further question. This one for Mr. Stroy, and then we can open it up to some additional discussion. You've been actually involved in operating many esports leagues. So, what do you think are the benefits to hosting competitions by public organizations like the IESF or more national federations?
I think the biggest one is the national pride. I mean, every single player out there likes to play for his team or for his own, but when he's actually going to an international event where he's competing for his own country and the entire press is reflecting that, there is a big difference out there, and always you are going to see big rivalries between countries, and when we are having big international matches between countries, the viewership is really big compared to normal events out there. And on the other hand, there are a lot of cities all around the world that are investing heavily in having this kind of events in that respective city. And being a national esport, a national athlete for your country means a lot.
Any other thoughts on the benefits of having esports as part of a public organization, or any benefits to having national esports environments?
I think you're using the word esports, and let's define sports. Is esports currently recognized as a sport? And the answer to the question is no. It is not yet accepted in terms of the international sporting family as being a sport. Governments who are still paranoid about physical participation being important to sport as opposed to perhaps mental preparation. There's still a lot of work to be done. And I think esports is in a crossroads where it could go two ways. One, it could have this enormous growth which is happening at the moment, which is basically out of everybody's control, because the growth is coming from all sorts of different sectors, game operators, promoters, as I said previously. So there is a danger that esports will just go off in all sorts of directions, become amazingly popular as it is, and cities hosting this, that, and everywhere, but that is not actually going to make it a sport. It's, as I said, if cities are going to become behind it, if governments are going to come behind it, if international Olympic committees are going to come behind it, it's got to bring itself together in a very coordinated manner so that there is international competition. And that means that all the stakeholders that are involved with this great success need to come together to make it a e-sport. Because at the moment it's an e-entertainment more than it is an e-sport. And I think the risk is, unless the federation comes together and encourages all parties to become united in its approach, we will miss the wave. Because the wave is there. There's no question that the wave is there, and now is the time to capture that wave.
Absolutely. The time is now. There's a lot of excitement, a lot of interest in esports, and important to see that development there. And this has to do with a lot of the motions within esports, the driving forces behind it. But it's safe to say that esports is in a very impressive situation currently, and it's not only important to look at where things are now, but also towards the future, and really towards the next topic of discussion, which is going to be the legacy of esports. So, what is the next step for esports to have a legacy like traditional sports? Like we see where traditional sports are now. What is the next step that esports has to take to leave a legacy like that?
My view is that for every player that's here, you should be surrounded by some kind of digital innovation community, a game developing community, people that are interested in nurturing both your practice as players, but also the innovation base around games. So I think that, one direction certainly is to be part of sports, and that's fantastic because it allows you as players, I think, to have things like being able to get an athlete's visa to be able to enter a country and compete. These are practical benefits to being associated with sport. There's also public goods associated with it, so being able to get behind social agendas and missions that hopefully make the world a better place. But I think that there's a very powerful message around trying to build and nurture digital innovation around e-sport players. And that, I think, is something that's really worth thinking about because it can change not just the practice of esports, but actually the digital infrastructure around the world.
I think just to add to that, if I was looking at a legacy, I would like a legacy that every single parent would be proud of having an e-sport champion, that every government would be proud to host an e-sport event, that we could actually get everybody from a legacy point of view to actually see that this is such a dynamic, creative, motivating force and not be fearful of it, which is what I tend to feel that people are somewhat fearful of it. So if there's going to be a legacy, people need to be nurtured, players need to be looked after, there needs to be the right transparency, the right conditions, all the aspects that of a sport needs, that needs to be part of that future legacy of esports.
Now, I'd like to direct a very important question to Mr. Seung-Moon Lee. Infiltration, as an esports professional yourself, what kind of legacy do you feel like esports professionals, esports players should leave?
아직까지 e스포츠라는 직업군, e스포츠 선수라는 직업과 그리고 이 산업 자체가 아직은 굉장히 어리고 안정적이 못한 직업이라고 생각합니다. 그래서 좀 더 선수들이 게임에만 집중할 수 있고 좀 더 성장해 나갈 수 있도록 안정적이고 게임에만 집중할 수 있는 그런 환경을 조성해 줄 필요가 있다고 생각합니다. 뭐 예를 들면 평범한 스포츠와 똑같이 코치라든가 감독이라든가 매니저라든가 선수들은 선수들의 나름대로서 게임에만 집중할 수 있는 환경을 만들어주기 위해서 여러 가지 스태프가 많이 필요하고요. 그런 것 이외에도 아직은 시기상조라고 볼 수도 있지만은 여러 가지 2년이나 3년 동안 군대를 꼭 다녀와야 하는 뭐 입대 문제 관련해서도 만약에 예를 들어서 공인된 대회에서 상위 입상을 한다. 뭐 공인된 대회에서 우승 시에는 면제 혜택이 주어진다 등등의 특례가 주어질 수도 있겠고요. 또는 금액적인 면에서도 굉장히 중요합니다. 선수들이 제 경험을 미루어서 봤을 때 4년 전, 3년 전에 대회를 나가기 위해서 미국을 가면 우승 상금으로 200만 원을 벌었어요. 근데 제가 거기에 가기까지 드는 비용이 200만 원이에요. 그렇기 때문에 이렇게 e스포츠가 아니고 유명하지 않은 뭐 게임의 종목 같은 경우는 먹고 살기 힘들 뿐만 아니라 꿈을 잃어버리기도 굉장히 쉽습니다. 그래서 꼭 LOL이나 스타크래프트 같은 유명한 메이저 게임 이외에도 다른 다양한 e스포츠 가능성이 있는 종목들을 다양하게 발굴해서 많은 선수들을 좀 더 노력할 수 있게 환경을 조성해 줘야 된다고 생각하고요. 그 위에 e스포츠는 아직 성장하고 있는 단계이기 때문에 게임의 종목별로 수명이 너무 짧아요. 짧은 경우에는 1년, 2년, 오래가는 게임에도 3년, 4년, 운이 좋게도 제가 하고 있는 스트리트 파이터라는 게임은 e스포츠로 점점 성장하고 있는 격투 게임이고 2008년부터 약 8년간 성장해온 게임이지만 아직도 많이 한참 모자란다고 생각합니다. 그래서 그 시간만큼이라도 앞서 말씀드렸던 것 같이 게이머들이 게임을 열심히 할 수 있는 환경을 조성해 줘야 된다고 생각하고요. 마지막으로 게이머 은퇴 후에도 그동안 쌓았던 경험이나 지식을 바탕으로 인해서 계속해서 자기가 몸담았던 곳에서 열심히 활동할 수 있도록 감독이 된다든가 코치가 된다든가 몇 년 동안 이제 게이머 생활을 하면서 쌓여왔던 모든 지식들은 결코 얕볼 수가 없는 지식들입니다. 개인적으로 저도 그렇고, 그리고 얼마 전에 큰 이슈로서 스타크래프트 쪽에서 이영호 선수가 은퇴를 했는데 많은 팬들이 아직도 선수의 스타크래프트2에서 계속 남아주길 바란다. 감독으로서, 코치로서, 스태프로서 팬들도 원하고 있고 선수들도 원하고 있는 것 같아요. 은퇴 후에 뭐 개인 방송이나 스트리머로 빠져서 열심히 노력하는 선수들도 있지만 그것보다는 역시 자기가 원하는 게임판에서 열심히 노력하는 모습을 보고 싶다는 것이 모두의 바람이기 때문에 그 점에 은퇴 후에 노동에 관한 환경도 제도적으로 갖춰야 된다고 생각합니다. 마지막으로 물론 스포츠화 되기 위해서는 지켜야 할 것도 많죠. 도핑이라든가 승부 조작이라든가 좀 부정적인 면에서도 확실하게 제도나 절차를 만들어서 깨끗한 게임을 위한 환경을 조성해 주셔야 된다고 생각합니다.
May I add something?
Absolutely.
Yes, maybe I can add as well. I agree with Mr. Patrick that between virtual reality and real life is different. So it's, I think we have to reduce as well if there is on the games a lot of violence or something. For you said that the parent will be proud of these e-games, and also don't forget that sport is equal. So for the gender is very important for this legacy. So that's what I want to add for this.
Now, I believe we also have a translation of Mr. Infiltration's statement, so I think it's going to be read now.
So let me briefly interpret what he says. So since many game players are young and also their working environments are not that stable, so it is very important to create a system where players can focus on playing games in a stable manner. And also they should have a well-established path to serve as the coach or the trainer or manager after their retirement. And also a lot of steps need to be provided for the player so that they can concentrate on playing games. And also in Korea, every man has to go to military. But if the players win the major competition, then they should be given some special privileges, such as the exemption from military services. And also in terms of the monetary support, I think that we really have a long way to go. So a few years ago, like 4 or 3 years ago, I went to the United States for a championship, and at the time the prize money was 2 million won. But in fact, the traveling expense to get to the US was 2 million won. And therefore, in that sense, we have to have the better financial support as well. And also, not only the major games, but also small non-major games need to be supported better. Currently, all the supports are concentrating on major games, but we have to find out and discover other non-major games and provide supports for the development of these games as well. Since the esport is still in the toddler stage, their lifespan is also very short. Some of the games die after 1 year or after 2 years. Fortunately, Street Fighter has enjoyed 8 years for strong growth, but I think we still have a long way to go. So summarizing what I said, I think what is important is to build an environment where players can focus on playing games, and also they should have a better opportunities in terms of the post-retirement career. They should remain, if they want, in the game industry as a instructor, coach, or the manager, because while playing games, they accumulate a huge amount of knowledges and experiences, and these knowledges need to be exploited.
Thank you very much. Important that players have somewhere to go, transition into management role as a coach. Very important legacy for the players to have. Now, one of our final questions. Do you think, as individuals, as a panel as a whole, what do you think, as far as esports can learn from traditional sports to make, we have very important legacies from a lot of major sports. What do you think sports can learn from them to create a similar legacy?
It's very interesting to hear what he says, because he's actually describing what any major international federation would take as its responsibility from ground upwards. I go back a long way, and remember in the early 70s, I met a virtual bankrupt organization called FIFA. And FIFA had about 100 members then, not 209 as it has today, and no money. And the whole basis of what happened with FIFA was a very solid development plan that was put in place to take the strength and knowledge of Europe and South America, because they were the only countries that were playing and supporting soccer, and to take a development program out to the world, out to Africa, out to Asia, out to third world nations like the United States and Japan, to actually give them the wherewithal and knowledge from coaching, training, medicine, administration, to build the sport on a totally international basis and on a coordinated basis, looking after players, looking after the future. And okay, it's facing some unique problems at this present moment in time, but it has become an enormous and strong, fundamentally an incredible international federation, as has many other federations. And this comes back to my point about, are you a sport? If you are a sport and you are an e-sport, you've got to galvanize the globe. You've got to galvanize federations. You've got to get the IOC to recognize you, even if they don't put you yet on their calendar, and then develop that program so that all of the things that a sport should do in terms of looking after its athletes, giving them the right training, giving them a career to the future, building a whole longevity of life to being part of that sport. He's describing what a true international sports federation should and could be, and that should be the legacy.
Any further thoughts on what esports can learn from current sport legacies?
I think it's just practical, now, a lot of sport communities is worried regarding their young generation, their youth. They play in front of the games for so many hours, and what is the impact and everything. So I think internally, you have to have, like he said that, Patrick said that a good program for the future, even though not yet recognized by IOC or by OCA or other sport institution in the world. But because now, as you know, that a lot of traditional sport queuing to become, in the Olympic sport event or being recognized by IOC or other, continental institution. But you can do and promote this to the sport community during multi-event. For example, in Nanjing, they have a sport lab for Wushu, the new sport, and also sport climbing that not yet on the Olympic sport. So maybe you can ask to be able to give place and times to promote your sport and for people outside to know that this is a good sport to be inside the community of sport. That's what I know.
And one thing I would say as well is if you look at international sport over the last 30 years, one of the key things that they've kind of woken up to realizing is the importance of athlete involvement within the governance of the sports. So you look at something like the International Olympic Committee's Athletes Commission, and at the heart of that is a question of self-determination governed by the practice community of the individual sports. And I think it's useful to bear that in mind because it's still quite recent in traditional sports to realize the importance of that. And at this particular time in esports history, where a lot of what is determined by players, by the industry, comes out of the publishers and what they decide is worth playing, what they decide is worth having events on, I think that the community of esports players could get behind the idea that in fact being more capable of determining the types of events that are played, the types of games that are played, and the kinds of social responsibilities that publishers ought to have around those player communities is where we need to be. And I think the players have that capacity, they have that power.
All right, now one of our final topics to talk about is, as far as leaving a legacy is concerned, is the steps that national federations and specifically the IESF, where we are right now, the steps that they have to take to get closer to sports organizations. So maybe Mr. Stroh can talk more about steps that esports and especially examples like IESF and other national federations need to take to become more similar to more traditional sports organizations.
Yes, a couple of years ago, pretty much all the big sport institutions out there, they wouldn't know much about esports. Lately, this doesn't seem the case anymore. Pretty much everybody out there understands what this is. And they are becoming really aware of all these esport events that are taking place. And I encourage all the other national federations or other similar esport organizations to invite a lot of sports people to their own events to actually see what these esport events like. I mean, one thing is to actually describe or send a presentation, okay, this is esport. Another thing is actually, okay, please come to our event, see what it is, get involved, get in touch with the players, see the whole thing. I mean, it's really important for any sport involved individual to actually understand how this whole esport infrastructure is being built right now.
All right, now, Mr. Mia?
Well, yeah, just one thing occurs to me. You know, I have a 5-year-old son who 2 weeks ago started Taekwondo. And you know, I want to be at every training session and support him. And I think one thing that is different about esports and traditional sports is we don't yet have that intergenerational relationship in the development of the players. And so until you're playing games where your parents can be involved, where they can support you in nurturing your skills in that, I think we don't get to the point where we have that widespread social investment into something. And it might be that that's one thing that needs to be addressed to really figure out how to make this a global concern, not just sort of individuals on their own.
Right now, a lot of other involvement within esports, not just the players, not just the organizations, but a lot of like game companies, event organizers, even esports media. What are some of the things that those people, those organizations, the media can do to endeavor to make a better future for esports?
Again, it comes back to the risk that a lot of the games are in it to be profitable. If you see the purchase of some of the games companies over the last year and so in terms of the multi-millions that are being paid, their primary motivation is obviously their bottom line and their profit. And that in some ways could be limiting because it just adds perhaps to the concerns of the games. And this is where you've got one big advantage over all of the traditional sports. You have the audience, you have the young audience that are passionate, that want to be involved. The other sports don't have that. So the whole process is now one of an educational process that you've got, as I say, using the word of a development program, is that you've got to galvanize the industry and all stakeholders in the industry to come together to educate and to get people to understand and communicate in a consistent and in a very clear, concise manner so that they can understand what this whole evolution is all about. And I think if that can be put together where all stakeholders, because there's no shortage of resources to what they have in terms of a small percentage of what this industry is generating, if that was invested into education, development structures, players, panels and things that will give it the true sport status, everything is resolvable within the industry that exists. It's just a matter of education. It's educating people to understand the importance of it being structured correctly and properly as a e-sport.
All right, now I believe we are going to have a question and answer period here with the audience, with media. Any questions that you have for this panel, make sure to start thinking about them. But before we move on to that, just any final words from any of the panel, thoughts on either the legacy of esports, like we've been discussing, some of the moving parts within esports, some of the forces behind that, or even where esports stands. Any final thoughts from any member of the panel?
Yeah, I just want to add one last thing. The development of the technology is going to push esport much faster, it's going to create the whole esport world. It's going to be much, much bigger. And I think for all the other sports out there, this is going to be like an example, a model to follow. And I'm pretty sure there are going to be a lot of sports that are going to try to have a lot of technological advancements in their field.
Maybe from me, there are 2 points. The first one is because we knew that our youth, because sport is not attractive to our youth anymore, some sport, not all of them. This is the chance for sport to be able to be, educated, like you said, to the communities and to the young people, that they have a chance to be the champion through this e-sport. And then the other thing is work together with your with every national federations in every countries, with their NOCs, to educate, to promote, and to give them information that this e-sport have a very big, have a positive side rather than the negative side. So when the first time I met Mr. President and e-sport, it must be one individual athlete with the, the screen or whatever, and found out this a team. That means that this harmony of coordination between the athletes, it's there. And then in the next level, you should go through, doping area, go and work together with WADA to make it clean sport, and then it will be accepted everywhere. So in the future, I wish you have a very great potential to be there.
One thing occurs to me is a friend of mine was at a conference yesterday about the future of the film industry. And one of the speakers at the conference said that cinemas today need to think about what they offer people beyond the film. We can access films wherever we are now, whether we're on our mobile devices or in our homes. The cinema, as a physical space, needs to rethink what it's offering its audiences. And I think one of the things that's really interesting to think about from the esports perspective is what kind of things should happen within a venue like this. Because it's very, I think, tempting to emulate sports stadia in the construction of what takes place there, which may involve principally people sitting in chairs watching something occur. But actually, I think we can have a more radical approach to that as we get towards greater simulation technology, which gives less reason to go to a physical space and be part of a physical community. I think we need to rethink what happens in those spaces to make it worth going to. The economics of sport relies heavily on the live experience. And I wonder, 30, 40 years from now, what it might feel like to be in a physical space where esports activities taking place. I suspect it'll be very different.
Having my last point as well. We've seen again with FIFA that FIFA have developed an esport game which has become extraordinarily successful and is very much part of their own presentation of their sport and their game. If we're developing an international federation, which we are, then clearly all of these other sports need to embrace an e-game approach. They have to live in today's world, and they can't ignore the fact of where the younger generation is, where communication is, where mobile now is, where the new technology is arriving. And maybe one way to do this and to improve the image and the association of being a sport will be actually to embrace and work with all those other sport federations on their e-requirements, because they all need to have an e-requirement. You're collaborating with the IAAF, why not collaborate with all of the international federations to help show, lead to how esports can make a difference for them as well?
Very important points. Now I'd like to open it up to the Q&A session that I mentioned previously. So if there's anyone in the audience, any members of the press who have questions for any of our wonderful panel up here, we'd love to take those questions at this time, maybe open up for some further discussion.
Thank you. My name is Luis Regalini. I'm the president of the Argentinian Esports Federation. Association, not yet. My question is for the entire panel. would you believe that it would be a good idea to strive for having esports clubs rather than teams, working as the Besiktas team, football club in Turkey, is doing to their team, pushing their team members within the traditional sports club to become an esports club?
Yeah, I think this is already happening. I mean, we are seeing a lot of esport clubs out there becoming really professional, getting a lot of funding, a lot of sponsors, paying big salaries. All their players have long-term contracts. And you are right, Beşiktaş Istanbul is one of the first big football clubs that actually started their own League of Legends team a couple of years ago. Hopefully there are going to be a lot of other traditional sports clubs that are going to embrace this and they are going to start their own esport team. But at the end, it's up to them. Beşiktaş saw a really good thing in this. And I'm pretty sure, especially in Turkey and in some Eastern European countries, this is going to happen quite soon.
If I can say that, as I said before, there is a danger that if you don't start controlling things, this is going to be completely out of control. As I understand it at the present moment, anybody can organise a league, anybody can organise an event. I do not know of any other sport that doesn't have a club system, a league system, some sort of organised structure. And if you don't put an organised structure into place, you're going to lose the amazing opportunity that you have. So from a personal point of view, I would advocate that clubs is a very essential part, as is leagues, as is city structures, the clubs and the competitions that you see in any other sport ought to be evolving for esport.
All right, any other questions out there? Any member of the audience? If any thoughts that you have, just feel free to ask our panel. We'd be glad to discuss it.
My name is Alex Lim. I'm the Secretary General of International Sports Federation. Actually, as far as I know, Mr. Patrick Nolly is leading the International Federation of Poker, and yeah, IFP is pretty much on the same page as IESF. As running this international federation, think the key factor of sports and also in esports is players. And one of the issues that we are facing right now is the players themselves don't really perceive themselves as a sports player in esports right now. So I would like to ask, what kind of method or measure or any kind of education program that IFP is providing for pushing these players and athletes to perceive themselves as a sports player or have more self-esteem as the sports players. Maybe I think Madam Rita, as the high authority of the International Volleyball Federation, can answer this question as well.
If I go first, poker is in a very similar situation as esports because we have to fight the perception that poker is just gaming and gambling. And there are a very solid group of professional players that earn their living from playing poker from a gaming and gambling point of view. But we as a federation can't look after just that very small group of people that obviously make their living from poker. If we want to be competitive, first of all, we have to show that our sport is a competitive sport. So our recognition is through match poker, which is a duplicate basis of poker, which evens the field. The next thing we have to do is obviously create our national federation structure. And like you, we started with 7 founding members. We now have 60 nations. And we therefore have had to educate and to work with our national founding members, to put the infrastructure that our friend from Argentina was saying from us, is that we're having to put to clubs, to put structures. We've been handicapped because we need technology. and we need the mobile, because everything that we are doing for development of match poker is based upon mobile and mobile use. We don't have cards. We don't have to have chips. We have all the information of hand logs and hand information with us. So we are gradually building up with a very solid foundation ground up, and eventually perhaps we can then help that tier of top professional players. But we've had to ignore that element at this present moment in time because there's very little we can do for them because they're already catered for, and in some ways they probably are resistant to the mass market. So your federation, like ours, has to decide, where you're pitching yourself. And where we're pitching ourselves is across a very major mass market to organize national championships, regional championships, world championships, but make sure that anybody that is in that event has arrived at that event based on skill. We don't want anybody coming because they've paid money to come. We want a true performance that any player has to be assessed and can only be at that position based on skill. That takes time. And that is what we are slowly processing through. And we have to communicate that to the sports community. We have to keep the IOC and everybody informed on what we're doing. So we are running very, very clear parallel paths. And the similarity is we're dealing with a very active market, youth market, modern media market. So we're both in a very, very strong position if we get the foundation right. And you, like we, need to get that foundation right. Then the pro players will be looked after at a later date.
I think we have the same problem in when we develop and promote beach volleyball. As you know that beach volleyball was exhibition in Barcelona, and then first time in Atlanta that we organized officially. But in Asia, we should have exhibition first in Busan here, and then Hiroshima. And then after that, officially will be in Asian Games. After we achieve those kind of, achievement with officially being recognized in Olympic Games and in Asian Games, this is very important to strengthen inside the organization. We don't want beach volley because of a good broadcasting and a lot of sponsors, marketing rights is good, become somewhere else. So it has to be in the same umbrella. So it has to be under the FIVB, the Indoor Association as well, only as a council. So we are the council at that time. After finish this official and become recognized by the multi-events, now comes the problems, because we want everybody can play on the beach. But as you know, the beach volleyball uniform is so attractive with all the bikini and everywhere, and it's not accepted. Even though in Indonesia, when I'm the president of National Federation of Volleyball in Indonesia, in some provinces, they don't want to play beach volleyball because it's against the religion, and they make a protest everywhere. So that's why, and also in Asian country, like in Arabic countries as well, they don't want to have this beach volleyball. So that's why our executive board create a new uniform, not for Muslim uniform, but another uniform that can, accommodate all the players to be part of this volleyball. I think in e-games, e-sport is the same. When you reach this level, more than any other traditional sport in the world, because in terms of marketing, in terms of IT, in terms of broadcast, maybe you have no problem. But of course, how to convince the community, the parents, that this sport is really sport, and how to convince international federations to be like IOC or OCA or any other, continental federations to recognize as a sport. This is still maybe hard work and a long way to go, but hopefully in the near future, because this is very important for our youth.
All right, now I'm not sure exactly how many more questions we have time for. We have time for a couple more questions. Okay, it looks like we're just going to go with one more, so let's go ahead and take one more question from the audience. If you have any other thoughts to share, any other questions that you have burning in your mind, go ahead and let us know. Looks like we have another question over there, so we'll go ahead and get that asked.
Hi, Jason from the Australian Esports Association. Following that comment that was just made about beach volleyball and its recognition as a sport and the challenges that it face culturally, if I could make a statement and ask for your feedback on it, it's that esports will continue to face challenges for official recognition as long as it revolves around themes of dragons, aliens, and things like wizards. And I think that is a challenge that esports will continue to face when you talk about looking for official recognition from government bodies. Could you comment on a statement like that?
If I can make a statement in that, I think the Federation obviously has to set standards. I think the Federation has got to get a strength, and it can only do it once it's got a strength, to actually then decide what games are acceptable, what games meet the criteria, what games are acceptable to good taste and to all the things where at this present moment of time you are dictated to by the fact that it's the games developers themselves that are obviously setting the standards, taking the decisions to how they're presented, and you've got very little you can do with that at this present moment in time. But if you're going to be a true federation, yes, you've actually got to take that big, brave step and write your rules, regulations, and criteria to what is acceptable in the presentational form that if it's given. And if that means less dragons, then it means less dragons. Personally, I love the dragons, but and I love quite a lot of what I've seen. But yes, you're right. At the end of the day, it's the federation in terms of its doping policy, in terms of its age policy, in terms of its presentational policy. If you're going to be a true federation, you have to take on the responsibility of all those areas, including what it is that you display in terms of your championships.
I mean, I think this is a really great point to bring up, and it's certainly one that I've thought about a lot. My response would be that the way sports work and the way that esports ought to work is they have a grassroots base of participation. And that allows the practice to develop, it allows the community to grow, and it allows the events to get bigger and bigger. A bad situation would be where you have 26 sports federations developing their esport title, around which you have no players taking part at all, because in fact people play the games they want to play. And I think that esports as a community, but also as an industry, has to operate on the basis of it pushing the titles that people want to play. You remove that and you remove the core out of this community. So it is a big challenge, I think, for the world of sport. But I think that it still has to remain, I'm optimistic that it's possible for these types of games to be recognized as sports games by official traditional sports organizations. And I think it comes back down to actually the work ethic of the players. So if the IOC president can see players who are training hard, they're staying fit, they're eating well, they're thinking about their psychology, all of these are the core elements about what makes an athlete. And those are the things, rather than the content of the game, that I think should be the focus.
All right, well, I do want to thank everyone for asking those questions. I know there are a lot of other questions out there, so maybe things to ask and talk about amongst yourselves afterwards. But I'd like to go ahead and bring this Esports Summit 2015 to a close. It's a lot of great discussion, a lot of important topics to discuss. I'm glad we've had this opportunity to come together and talk about those. So I'd like to formally close things. I want to thank everybody else for attending this, and do want to encourage you to talk about this amongst yourselves. A lot of important issues. I'm glad that we've been able to talk about them here today. My name is Reed Melton. I've been your host for tonight. This is the Nexon Arena in Seoul, South Korea. I want to thank you all for coming here and wish you a good evening.